We're going to pick back up with Chapter 4, Libel and Emotional Distress, dealing with the plaintiff's case, and elements for libel in setting up a plaintiff's case, and some defenses. And we're also going to talk a little bit about emotional distress, and that's intentional infliction of emotional distress and negligent infliction of an emotional distress. I'm going to try and break this down into pieces so that way you'll get shorter videos. So with that being said, off we go. Chapter 4, Libel and Emotional Distress, the plaintiff's case. Look, my point in trying to do this is to let you know that you can be sued for what you say. So when you're taking a look at this, take a look at through the eye of the, of the journalist. And I want you to relate this back to the materials that I gave to you with the shoots and lawyers. So the different stages with a case. And so when we're talking about the pleading stage and setting up a case and when is a case sufficient, and then also when we're talking about discovery and obtaining information. All right, basic definition of libel. You're dealing with false communication about another person, and that can cause damage to the person's reputation. There's different purposes behind the law. Purposes behind the laws are to protect somebody's reputation and to prevent and provide some way to compensate or redress people for the attack. So this can act as a deterrent, and hopefully again, I know I've said this before, it's hard to put the toothpaste back into the tube, but sometimes it is possible to restore somebody's reputation, depending on the circumstances. So the laws help provide some sort of mechanism to do that. When you're looking at these laws, you're also taking a look at the person's reputation. So the reputation's intangible. This is not something that you can reach out and touch and feel. But it still has value. So the value with somebody's reputation, the ability for somebody to participate in the social community, and also that translates into economic value and economic life. That goes for businesses, that also goes for individuals. And injuries can be valued. Now, not in every single case can you get a specific value, but it can still be where that can be worked out. And there can be compensation for losses. In addition to that, it's possible to have injunctions, so you can have orders coming from a court to prevent someone from taking action that might be defamatory. And also, there can be orders from the court that can order retractions if that isn't done voluntarily. Along the lines with, I guess, the purposes of the law, you can take a look at the history. The textbook goes into several pages of the history, and they deal with both common law and statutory law and how those came about. Look, the idea is towards protecting reputation. This goes to back with the Founding Fathers and the original colonies and after the Revolutionary War. So seditious libel was making statements against the U.S. government and against the president, and they were trying to tamp down anything like that in the beginning to prevent rebellion and to keep the newly formed government from coming apart. So there was censorship, there was trying to silence the opposition, and it became criminal to make any sort of statement against the president or against the U.S. government. And you could defend against this if you were able to prove the truth of the statement, just like with libel laws now. But there was a presumption of guilt, and then you had to prove your innocence. And again, this was any sort of writing that was false or scandalous or malicious against the Congress or against the president. Eventually, the Founding Fathers saw the wisdom in that law being changed. So, look, as part of the problems with libel, and especially the way that it was set up, but even now, it creates a chilling effect. So it prevents people from speaking freely, and it silences criticism, which kind of flies in the face of the First Amendment and freedom of speech. So there's a balancing out of interests. The First Amendment does not give free rein to say anything that you want, and we've talked about that before. But you have to balance out the value of individuals' reputations and the right for them to secure that value against rights of individuals to speak and to be heard on issues of importance. So there has to be accountability, and there has to be public scrutiny, but that has to be balanced out. So there can be, as part of the calculus, I guess, in figuring out what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, there's the costs of that. So there's the expense of libel, and as that affects journalists, there could be the cost of, the legal costs that go along with it, having an attorney, and going through a lawsuit. And also, there's damage to the integrity of the journalist and the journalist's reputation. Okay, so that gets us through the basics of sort of the historical background of this and talking about the value behind having libel laws. And what we'll get into next will be the definition of libel and also talking about facts versus opinion, and that'll be in the next video.